Go. Great. Welcome everyone to this episode of the Inclusion Conversation. If you're joining for the first time ever, lucky you. Welcome to the chat. My name is Solène Anglaret. I am the host of the Inclusion Conversation. I'm also the founder and author at Be Beyond Borders. And I started this adventure with the Inclusion Conversation in January this year. We've had several episodes already on lots of different topics around diversity and inclusion. And today I'm very excited to be talking with Karis and Pearce about dyslexia. So before we get into the topic, I just want to share with you a little bit about how the next hour is going to work. So we have the first half hour, which is recorded, and it's very much a conversation with Karis, Pearce, and I. And it's very informal, though. Don't worry. It's going to be really about their lived experience and personal stories and exploring the topic. Afterwards, we'll switch the recording off, and this is my favorite part. For those of you who are returning, you will know that's when everyone can come in, share their own personal stories, and ask any questions that they might have. A little bit about the etiquette for this inclusion conversation. So like I said, we are recording the first half, cameras on if you're comfortable, otherwise off, that's also fine. We have the subtitles, closed captions enabled, so you can have them if you need them. Also, we have the chat, and we love interacting with you, every one of you on the chat. So let's get started with that, actually. It is hot. Everyone keeps talking about the weather, which, you know, as a foreigner in Britain, I had to learn very quickly that that's a safe topic. You know, if you don't know what to talk about in the elevator, you talk about the weather. So what about introducing yourself in the chat, just saying your name and how hot is it where you are? In London right now, it's 28 degrees. It was 18 in Edinburgh when I left this morning, which is much more manageable, I have to say. So do share the temperature in the chat, and we'll see who has the highest temperature, and we might come back to you afterwards. In terms of mindset, this is a safe space. You know, bring an open mind. We're all here to learn. If you have any questions, any concerns, anything, just share them in the chat. And also very much make sure that it's all done from a place of kindness and a place of calling each other in rather than out. Finally, there are no breaks. If you need one, just take it. That's okay. You don't need to raise your hand. So that's it for the introduction. And we're now going to be hearing from our speakers. So less from me and more from them. So I am delighted to be joined by Karis and Pearce today. So Karis, I'm going to come to you first. If you'd like to please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name's Karis. I'm known as the co-founder of Social Stories Club, and Social Stories Club is a social enterprise gifting company, and I'm really passionate about everything social enterprises because I believe social enterprises are the future. Social enterprises are businesses which are led by their social mission. So we create gifts, and every product inside one of our gift boxes supports a different social cause, such as teas that educate girls and socks for everyone that's bought a pair is donated to the homeless. So we share all these amazing stories behind the social enterprise products in our boxes, in a story booklet included. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to show the world that these amazing social enterprises are here. Go and support them, because if you're going to buy a bar of chocolate, you might as well be also contributing to reforestation projects. If you're going to be drinking some tea, you might as well be educating some girls in tea growing regions too. So that's a bit what I do. I love the color pink. Everything in my life is pink. My walls are pink. My bottle is pink. And I live in Edinburgh, and I just love getting out and about and traveling. Last weekend, I was in the Isle of Skye.
Nice. Please drop in the chat as well where people can find all of your boxes, because I love that. That's Christmas present sorted, everyone. Take note. Pearce, what about you? Tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the color pink. I'm going to be completely honest. Mine is either going to be blue back in the day, but more recently green, as you can tell. There's a lot of green around me. But yeah, so I'm Pearce, the founder and CEO of Gwaan, which is an AI-powered personal trainer. So it uses the front-facing camera on your phone, and using that, we can detect what exercise you're doing, how many reps you've done, and then give you feedback on your form as well. The reason why we started it is that during lockdown, a lot of people were like stuck at home trying to keep fit, but motivation was something that everyone really struggled with. So we looked to have a look at that and then gamify exercise, so that effectively every rep counts. We want to ensure that people, when they do exercise, that they then get the positive reinforcement almost immediately, rather than having to wait a couple of months to see it on the scales. So yeah, that's what we do. We're motivation merchants. And yeah, looking forward to talking about dyslexia with you guys.
Awesome. I can't wait. I keep saying that to Pearce. I'm like, when is the app ready? I want to test it. I want to try it.
Very, very soon. Yeah, we're working very hard, but it's almost there.
Super exciting. Well, so nice to hear a bit more about you and what you do. Now let's delve into the topic. So when and how did you find out about dyslexia? Karis?
So I found out when I was 10 years old, but I was really grateful to my mum. It was my mum who knew I was dyslexic. So my mum is also dyslexic, and I was really underperforming in my school. I was really far behind. I failed all my exams. So everyone did the 11 plus, you do it a year earlier in the school that I was in. And I was the only one in my class who failed. And the school pulled my parents aside and basically said, Karis needs a new school. And my mum just pushed and pushed and pushed for me. And she got me a dyslexic test, and it came out that I was indeed dyslexic. And it was kind of a life-changing moment for me, because I realized at that point that I wasn't necessarily stupid, like I'd led to believe. My teacher even called me stupid in the class in front of all the other kids. So finding out I was dyslexic at 10 years old, it gave me a belief that maybe, there could be something more exciting for me in my future.
What about you, Pearce?
So for me, it was in year 4, so slightly earlier than Karis. Again, I had a parent that was dyslexic that I knew about. So my dad is still dyslexic. If you ever get a text of him, you know. But, it's yeah. So it was nice to have someone who could guide me through the process and teach me how to learn and how to think. My school was a little bit better with than Karis's teachers' approaches. They very much did take me in and then took me to one side and then taught me again, like this is how you need to read, and this is what it is, et cetera, et cetera. And that intervention really helped me, and then gave me the confidence I needed to then go on, because I realized I wasn't, at least internally, that I wasn't completely silly. Like I was very good at maths and science, but English or anything related to it, learning any kind of languages was really difficult for me. But yeah, managed to get through.
It's really fascinating, and it really shows the importance of how people react and how they make you feel, right? Because both of you have touched on, I realized that I wasn't stupid. And there's that real connection when I was reading up on dyslexia that, children tend to feel and internalize, I'm not getting this, therefore it must mean that. And to have people in your life that will break that and say, no, nothing to do with that. Is really important. Makes a huge difference. And it's interesting to have your two very different experiences. Now, fast forward from that time to today, how does dyslexia impact you in your everyday life right now?
Shall I go first again? So I guess a lot has happened between finding out that I was dyslexic and all the way up to now. But the biggest way that it really influences me now is probably my memory. Because I'm an entrepreneur and there's a lot of networking events and I've showed you I've got to be very, very organized, and I manage a team as well. I really struggle to keep organized with my memory. So going to networking events, I could have chatted with somebody last week and I couldn't really remember the conversation we had, what we spoke about, who they are. I really struggle with appointments. I've got to keep a very rigid diary, and I try and clear my diary as much as possible, because the more that's there, the more that I have to remember, knowing that really affects me. My spelling and my reading and my writing are all, I think I'm between the ages of 8 and 12. My age for reading, writing. So that's something that does hold me back, but it's with a lot of software like Grammarly, it's not necessarily as noticeable now.
Love Grammarly.
Yeah.
Definitely, they should, give us a commission, because we're going to be advertising for them. What about you, Pearce? So how does it impact you?
Yeah, so I think it very much the same way it does for Karis, but I'd probably add on to it. But first of all, my memory is also pretty bad. I have to write things down. I ticket everything I do on monday.com, another plug for them, and then use Grammarly. And then also I get my Mac to read back to me. So if there's any long articles or journals that I need to read, I do that. And that has really helped me, especially with like the work that I do. I'm constantly having to keep up to date with what's on the cutting edge of machine learning and AI. So being able to have that information absorbed into my brain that in a way that doesn't involve reading, it has been an absolute game changer. I would say that in terms of writing in general, I get very nervous as soon as it's time to write something. So if it's like a post on like social media or an email, sometimes I'll stall a little bit, but I think that's something I need to get over personally, and I will do. And then the last thing, I mean, we've touched on the negatives, but on the positive side, I would definitely say that being dyslexic often helps you to see the bigger picture, and then also then to make connections in ways between different disparate topics in ways that other people may not see. And for me, it's I would almost regard being dyslexic as a beautiful burden. It's not something you necessarily want to have when you're growing up, because simple things, the things that are simple for everybody else, becomes a really big mountain to climb for yourself. But later on in life, when you're starting to deal with complicated things, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're touching on a lot of things that I want to explore and unpack through some next questions. I think one thing to point out, I don't know if other people also in the room joining us, knew this. I personally, I have to, come and open and say, I didn't know that dyslexia affected memory until I met Karis. So it shows how much, there's to learn about so many different things and different people's human experiences. It's a long sentence, but yeah, it's just I find that really fascinating and humbling, because dyslexia is quite common, right? 10% of the population has dyslexia, and yet there's so much that we don't know. And both of you have touched on this a little bit in your answers already. You've talked about Grammarly and monday.com. Tell us a bit more about some of those strategies that you've put in place to navigate some of the challenges that come with having dyslexia.
I think when I apply to competitions and you have to do a lot of writing, I really, really struggle. And so I use AIs to write a lot of my blogs for me and a lot of my answers to things. There's also some applications they give you the opportunity to do a voice recording instead of writing. That has cut down the application time that it takes me to fill it from about 2-3 weeks to about 30 minutes. So that completely changed the experience for me as a dyslexic entrepreneur, just being given that opportunity to submit an application via a voice note. So when I can and when they allow me, I will submit via voice note, as opposed to writing things out. Writing things out means I actually forget what I've written, and I've got to go back and I repeat myself. I stop in a line and then I start a new sentence again. So there's just a lot of editing anytime I have to write. So that, and lots of different softwares as well, like we mentioned before, just trying to keep as organized as possible. And I guess it's not so much a strategy, but more of a coping mechanism. Is I avoid the things which I know I struggle with, which is a lot of back-to-back appointments in one day. I really can struggle with that. It's too much. So I try and clear my diary as much as possible. And you get a lot of people go, oh, let's meet on Zoom for 30 minutes. It's like, why? Do you know what I mean? I need to be given like a really good reason, because it's very overwhelming to have a diary full of things that you've got to remember, be able to plan for each one. So that's more of avoiding more than strategies with dealing.
Yeah, strategies can come in different forms. Avoidance can be a strategy, distraction can be a strategy, or facing or accommodating, so many different possibilities. Pearce, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I'd agree with some of that. So strangely enough, back-to-back appointments, something that I think I struggle with as well, especially with regards to context switching. So if I'm coding for the day and then I need to go to somewhere and speak, it's almost like my brain is like, we need to shut things down in order to open it back up again. So that's something for me, I would say in terms of coping strategies, as I've mentioned before, stuff like Grammarly really helps. Getting your computer to read back to you the text afterwards really helps. You can hear the mistakes better than you can read the mistakes, at least me personally. And then just be really regimented with your diary. For me, if it's not in the diary, it's not getting done. So because I will forget about it, and that's okay. If you've got the structures in place. And then in terms of like, yeah, I think that's the most of it. I think in terms of more specifically to like the entrepreneurial side, I've kind of just realized it's better for you to do the things that you're good at, and then the things that you're not good at, then give it to somebody else. And in doing so, then you end up getting the best out of yourself, while then also getting the best of other people as well. So just really learning how your brain works, the things you're good at, is a really important factor. And then you can crack on with the rest of it.
Play to your strength, they say in sports a lot, don't they? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're gonna talk about disclosing now, because both of you seem, I'm sure to people who have joined us, and we're 14 of us now, I'm sure it's, they just think, wow, it seems so easy to be talking about this and your experiences. But I know from previous conversations when we were preparing for this that it isn't. So I'd love to hear about, how do you feel about disclosing your dyslexia in general, but also in specific, different contexts?
When I have disclosed it, it's usually out of embarrassment. So it's usually I've met someone at a networking event, and it turns out that I actually should know who they are, and I've spoken to them and I just can't really remember. And so it's out of embarrassment I try and, explain I'm dyslexic, rather than a place of empowerment. So it's kind of, it's used to explain why I may have done something in a certain way. And that's not ideal for me, because I don't want it to be used as an excuse, and I don't want people to expect less than me or have different standards. But I have no problem or embarrassment anyone knowing that I'm dyslexic, and I'd rather people knew and they understood what dyslexia was as well. It really affects memory, and we spoke about memory earlier, but it's a specific type of memory that dyslexics are affected by. It's not long-term memory, it's short-term memory, but working memory specifically, which is the move between long and short-term memory. So that's what I really struggle with. And lots of people self-diagnose themselves as being dyslexic because they can't spell, because that's what they understand dyslexia to be, but it's not. Your brain, could be what you struggle with. But sometimes dyslexics, it just affects their numeracy, for example. And there's different, ways that it shows up. And the fact that not many people know that it affects working memory, when that's one of the biggest struggles that I have, I wish I didn't have to explain that as a symptom. I wish people would know that. There's a lot of misconceptions about dyslexia, the fact that it affects your intelligence as well. It actually has nothing to do with intelligence at all. And in a very dyslexic way, I completely forgot what question you asked me. Did I answer it?
You did. It was about disclosing, how you felt about disclosing your dyslexia. So you totally did answer that question. And you also answered what you wish people knew about dyslexia as well, which is brilliant, really, really useful as well. I think it's, it's exactly why I put these types of events together. It's that for all of us to take something away and learn something that we didn't know before. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Pearce, what are your thoughts on disclosing?
Yeah, just so your Karis can see, while you're talking, I'm also making sure I take notes so I don't forget, because this is quite typical for me. But just before I go on to disclosing, you mentioned something that was quite cool. So when I'm trying to describe sometimes to my wife as to why sometimes, like how my brain works, the way that I tend to discuss it is that I've got, if you imagine a computer, it's like I've got low RAM, so like no real working memory, but then a really strong CPU. So I often forget stuff, but then when given the same complicated problem again, I can often backwards compute how did I get to that resolution, and also words not great. So that's that. So I'll definitely agree with you on that point. But on the point of disclosing, it's been a difficult one for myself growing up, because I've always tried to, I suppose as a kid, I was a little bit proud. I didn't want to ever be seen as being the punk. Like I will always try my best to be near the top, because I just have to. That's just part of my character, like growing up. So I didn't like take it, in hindsight, I didn't take freebies. Like I shied away from taking extra time in exams and lessons and stuff. And looking back onto that, I almost think that was a little bit silly. I feel like I should have taken the help that was necessary. But again, there was that fear of, I didn't want to be seen as doing something successful, but then it being pinned on, you only got there because you were dyslexic, you had extra time. What about me? If I have extra time, what I've got there. But I suppose growing older now and then becoming more confident in who I am as a person, I realized that I have a responsibility to the next generation who may be growing up with dyslexia and then are struggling with the same things that I struggled with. So I guess in essence, what I'm trying to do by disclosing it is to be the person that younger me would have wanted to have seen and could have aspired to be like. So that's the main reason. But it is discouraging when you bring it up, and then let's say you're being interviewed somewhere, and then they go, "Oh, please tell us about your disability." I'm like, "Whoa, no one said it was a disability." Like I think and learn differently, and yeah, that's all I really wanted to put across. And it's an advantage. I would rather have it than not have it. It's a beautiful burden.
I love that. We'll come back to that, because I have a question on that and I really want to explore. Before we get there, can you tell us a bit more? You're both entrepreneurs, we've heard. I mean, amazing businesses, really exciting. How do you think your dyslexia might have influenced or shaped your entrepreneurial journey in certain ways? Or maybe it hasn't. Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Well, I have a co-founder, Ayush, who's absolutely fantastic. And like Piers was saying, you delegate the stuff you're not good at. So he absolutely loves finance and operations, which is stuff I don't like, I don't enjoy, and I'm not good at. So being able to focus on the stuff I'm good at, which is really marketing, branding, sales, and pitching. My dyslexia means that I'm very, very creative. And I'm also a daydreamer, which is very typical of people with dyslexics. But during these brainstorming sessions, I can come up with a lot of very creative ideas. And I've been known to be like the creative, the ideation person within the team. So that really works to our advantage. It comes up with lots of different ideas for marketing strategies. I get very bored very easily, which is part of, being the daydreaming dyslexic. You get bored very easily, you daydream, you have to really be gripped. So I think I've created a really fun environment for my team. Meetings are fun. They're fun because if I get bored, and I don't want my team to feel that. So it's creating that really fun environment where everyone feels safe. And we're very, very inclusive as well. So I give people a space to say, is there a way that we can make this better for you? So for example, if you're dyslexic, you shouldn't be asked to note take, because multitasking can be really, really challenging, especially when it comes to doing writing and reading multitasking. So this is something that a lot of employers actually don't realize. They don't know how to cater for dyslexic. And it's something that if you have dyslexia, you probably don't want to tell your employer, I don't want to be the note taker, because then you'll seem to be someone on the team who's either not a team player or shouldn't be promoted because there's stuff they can't do when others can do it all. But if you have an inclusive employer, like I've tried to be, I try to really learn about my team. What are their challenges that they struggle with? If you struggle to be the note taker, that's absolutely fine. We'll make sure that you're not the note taker. So I've really created that inclusive environment in my team, which has been something that's been really important to me. But I think mainly when it comes to how has it benefited, it was what Piers was saying earlier, being able to see that really big picture is something that dyslexics are known to be really good at, as well as that minute detail and being able to flick between the two of them as well. I think that's been something that I've really noticed that I'm quite good at, and I'm really grateful for that as well.
Amazing. Pearce, what about you? How do you think it might have shaped or influenced your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I feel like it has a lot. And typically when you read about dyslexics online, you see that a lot of them are entrepreneurs. And that's typically because we do not see things the way that other people do. And that in the area of business can definitely be seen as an advantage. Simple things because in effect, at least growing up, simple things like learning how to spell like a word on a spelling test, that was ridiculous because our brains are just not configured to in order to be able to do that. So we often from a young age have to find coping mechanisms and find a really complicated way of getting to the same solution. And that is quite difficult as a child. But then when you grow up and then you engage in the business, or maybe you're putting together a product, that kind of creative thinking can really help the team. And also in terms of touching to what Karis said about having a team and the things that your qualities that it makes you good at. Again, yeah, writing emails, not the person you want to get to be doing that. However, if you need something taught to another team member, something that's technical and complicated, because we've probably struggled in learning when we were younger, learning how to then communicate complex things is a little bit easier for us. I can see the same thing in my dad as well. He's able to really boil things down to the root cause and then say it from different perspectives in order for you to get there. And I'd probably say the last one would be just tenacity, as in being an entrepreneur is hard, but it's not, in a way I can almost say it's not as hard as it was going to school in primary school and trying to learn to do the things that everybody else found really easy. It kind of, growing up, it teaches you to really deal with hard times and to continuously break through walls that are in front of you. So I feel like I'm just doing what I was doing when I was younger by being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, actually, this is reminding me, I love that moment. And Karis, I remember when we first met and you told me about, I'm not afraid of failure. Do you want to say that point again? I'm sure you have it handy.
So one of the biggest reasons women specifically, but men also, don't start a business is due to fear of failure. I think if I remember correctly, it's 78% of people who would want to start businesses but don't. That's why fear of failure. And I've just never resonated with fear of failure because I'm not afraid of it. And it's because really, if you look at it in the way that people see success and failure, I was a failure throughout my whole primary school. I was lowest bottom of the class, couldn't make friends, meet with other people, called stupid by my teacher, school tried to kick me out. So I was kind of used to failing and I became very, very resilient to it. And so if I started Social Stories Club, which I did, and it failed, I wouldn't be afraid to write down that Facebook post, tried it, it failed. Do you know what I mean? Moving on to the next thing I'm excited for. That was just not a worry for me. But that is such an anxiety for people. It's that Facebook post. It's the people knowing that they tried and having to tell people that their idea that they were working on, that they put out there, didn't work. And it's something I'm really grateful for, that I don't have that fear. And I think it's because I've just failed so much. And I've kind of become quite resilient to it.
It's amazing. Yeah, that's really echoing, and I can relate to the fear. So to hear someone that's like, I don't even have it, just go for it. It's just really inspiring. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And you've touched on this already, but I do want to delve a bit more into it, and we'll end on this. You've touched on a lot of the extra skills, extra talents that come with having dyslexia. And you talked about creativity, about problem solving, about tenacity, resilience. Is there more? Tell us everything.
I'd say the biggest thing for me has been, it was such a struggle moving from being the bottom of the class to going through my GCSEs. I was given the opportunity to move schools, so I moved down south and I could start afresh. And I worked so hard to achieve my GCSEs. It's actually one of the biggest achievements of my life, way bigger to me than my degree. Do you know what I mean? Because I knew I had to work so hard for it. So for my GCSEs, I didn't go to parties. I got up early and I revised. Lunch breaks, I'd be revising. After school, I'd be revising. Weekend, I'd be revising for 2 years. Then that instilled in me a work ethic. Do you know what I mean? I worked really hard because I had to. And a lot of my peers, even though I got A stars and A's, they did better than me with much less work. For me, it was the work ethic I had, which I've seen, do you know what I mean, throughout. In order to start a business, it just takes every ounce of you, or it has of me, every single little bit. And I'd already done it for my GCSEs. So it was just carrying on from that. So it's not so much dyslexia, it's the coping mechanisms and what I had to do because I was dyslexic have mean I'm quite resilient and a very, very hard worker as well. Because you have to work hard, much, much harder if you're dyslexic. And you know, I mentioned about working memory and having a bad working memory and a bad short-term memory. Well, I went over my notes for my GCSEs so many times that in my long-term memory, so I could tell you everything about the Galapagos Islands, the Daintree rainforest, everything about Jane Eyre, for example, because of these are all in my long-term memory. Whereas my business degree, A-levels, I mean, I didn't need it. I'd already learned the exam technique from my GCSEs. So yeah, I'd say the work ethic that's been instilled is an enormous advantage.
Amazing. Pearce, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll add to that. So I would say spatial aware, the ones that haven't been mentioned. So spatial awareness is definitely a big one. I could be in somewhere random and then I'll look at the way the road is set up and I'll be like, oh, this is exactly like this place. And I try to explain it to people and they just can't see it, but I know for a fact just the way the place feels is very similar. And then for similar reasons, sports, you tend to see a lot of dyslexic people in sports. So like, for example, Lewis Hamilton is one. It's very good at understanding where he is on the track and speeds and stuff like that. You often find them in situations where they need to use their hands a lot. So like laborers or designers often tend to have some skills that are related to it. And then touched on it from before. So that also may pop up with stuff like IKEA furniture. So I do not struggle putting it together. I can just have a look at the thing. I can almost rotate it in my mind and be like, okay, that needs to go there, this needs to go here. Isn't that obvious? And apparently it's not. So, but if you ask me to read the name of whatever the stool is made, like the name of the stool, that Swedish name they give it, I will. Whoa. Never in your life will I be able to say that because my brain just can't do it. And then the last one I have to echo from Karis as well is just the tenacity and hardworking. That is a big thing. So because we've had so much adversity when we were younger, working hard into the maximum is our normal. That's the mean for us. So that's why, yeah, that's it. That's it.
Amazing. I love finishing on this positive note. And I think we've been through that journey in just 30 minutes of, you know, a lot of ups and downs, highs and lows that life brings from thinking differently, learning differently, being different. And that's the beauty of these discussions, is that we can learn from each other around all of these elements of diversity. So thank you so much, honestly, for coming and sharing your experiences. Please, everyone, stick around. We are going to go off the record and have a conversation. Before we do that, I will just share this final little slide for those watching the recording. So thank you if you are watching the recording, really appreciate it. I hope you can join us live next time and enjoy the second half of the conversation as well. We have 3 episodes coming up. The next one is just in a couple of weeks. It's with my great friend Ashanti, and she's going to be talking to us about where is the diversity in diversity and inclusion, because turns out that in the UK, 80% of people working in diversity and inclusion are white female. So hey, something to check myself on as well. So it'll be a very interesting conversation. Then we have an episode in July around where is home, the path to belonging, with 2 guests who've traveled and lived in so many different countries. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. And then we have a summer break. Everybody needs a break. I'm getting married. I don't know what you're doing. We'll hear about that maybe later. So then we come back at the end of August with inclusive design and innovation, which should be really fascinating as well. If you would like to, please follow us on Instagram. It's at @BeyondBorders. You can also subscribe to the newsletter, bbeyondborders.com. And you can watch all the past episodes of the Inclusion Conversation on YouTube as well. And you can subscribe on there as well. So many subscribe buttons. I know, it's crazy. But yes, thank you so much. If you're watching the recording, I'll just pause it now.